In this video, we're going to be building a $2,000 editing and gaming computer so that my friend Denver can start streaming playthroughs for his channel and also edit his videos much more efficiently. Phones and laptops are nice and can do a lot of things, but if you're trying to release a lot of content, sometimes having something more powerful is just a huge time saver. For this build, we went on 3 major websites to look for components and compare their prices. If you're in America, the 3 websites that I like to look at are Amazon, Newegg, and eBay. Another website that I sometimes look at is slickdeals.net. They often offer discounted items, but it's really hit and miss with them as it may take time for the item that you want to pop up on that website. One note that I'd like to say about Amazon or eBay is that some components in computers are really hard to break, so it's okay to buy them used. This is a really efficient way of saving hundreds of dollars. For example, items that are okay to buy used are CPUs, motherboards, graphic cards, RAM, Wi-Fi cards, speakers, and other parts I'm probably forgetting. The reason that these parts are safe to buy used is that they don't have moving parts. Chances are that if you receive them and they are working, as long as you provide them with adequate cooling, these computer parts will last forever. Items that I'll never buy used are SSDs and hard disk drives, especially hard drives because they're already prone to failure when used, so getting them used is even more of a risk. It basically comes down to the nature of them. They're mechanical and have spinning plates, so anything that has moving parts like a car can break easily. SSDs don't have moving parts, but have a limited amount of write erase cycles, and without knowing how the previous owner used their SSD, I wouldn't take the risk. Another essential component that can be bought as open box on Amazon but should never be bought used is the power supply. After all, it's what distributes the power to all the components in the build, so getting something used just doesn't make sense. I personally will spend a little more to have a good power supply. Having built hundreds of computers, having a cheap power supply can lead to more issues than you can ever imagine. As for components such as the PC tower, keyboard, mouse, honestly, if you're getting the basic versions of them, they're extremely cheap, so why get used? For this build, since we are on a budget, we went with a blend of premium components mixed with medium high-end components. This is also why some components were released 1 year or so ago as opposed to the latest tech. The thing is that most often than not, I found that newer model items are so much more expensive as opposed to slightly older model items for very little speed increases. So without any further ado, let's look at what we bought. For the processor, we went with the i9-9900K, which cost $399. Why did we go for the i9-9900K as opposed to the i5 or i7? If this was purely a gaming computer, the i5 or i7 of the same generation would have been fine. The i9 would not make much of a difference, but since we are also aiming to make this an editing station, having the extra core power from the extra cores offered by this processor just makes the export that much quicker. You can still have a good editing station on the i5 or i7, but I find that paying that extra $100 is well worth it for the extra speed. Graphic card wise, we chose the RTX 2070 and we spent $474.95 on it. For that price, we could have bought a 1080 Ti as that card is technically slightly faster even though it's an older graphics card. So why did we go for the RTX 2070 if it's slower? The reason that I picked the 2070 is simply for its ray tracing abilities. More and more games are implementing this feature, and having a card that is specifically made for this will ultimately give much better performance in the future. And if you're wondering what ray tracing is, well, it's a rendering technique for generating an image by tracing the path of light as pixels appear in an image plane and simulating the effects of its encounters with virtual objects. And if you didn't get that, it basically makes light bounce off of objects in a much more realistic way. The motherboard we chose was the Asus Prime B365A LGA 1151 socket. It went for $79.99. It's not a crazy motherboard, but accepts up to 64 gigabytes of RAM and basically does its job. Obviously, there's much more expensive models, but if you're only planning on running one graphics card at a time and don't plan on adding a bunch of extra cards or overclocking, well then there's really not much reason in spending more money on a more expensive motherboard. To start out, we bought one stick of 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM for $62.99. 16 gigabytes may not seem like a lot, but if you're not doing crazy VFX editing or planning to do a bunch of motion graphics, 16 gigabytes is actually plenty. Since the motherboard has 4 slots, if ever the RAM seems to be an issue, adding up to 3 extra sticks of 16 gigabytes of RAM is pretty easy. Just be sure to buy the same model and brand. RAM is known to have compatibility issues, so mix and matching RAM is probably not ideal. For the tower, we went with the cheapest mid-tower on Amazon that looked decent. It came out to $68.99. Again, towers can be really expensive if you are looking to have a specific design, but your tower can look as fancy as you want. It's not going to give your computer better speed, so if you're not bothered about the aesthetics of the computer, I'd recommend to take whatever is the cheapest. Now that we have the major components selected, we needed to make sure to have adequate storage space. We went for a 500 gigabyte M2 SSD for $59.99. I recommend to have at least 500 gigabytes on either an SSD or M2 SSD, as these are ideal to install Windows, Office, and all the major programs that you'll need. Then to store games, video footage, etc., we bought two 4TB Seagate hard drives. Each was $89.94. The reason I always buy internal storage in pairs is that I'm an avid believer of having redundancy in your data. I can't stress how important it is to have backups of your files. By having two exact hard drives, you can easily back up files and mimic hard drive A and hard drive B so that there's always an exact copy on both hard drives. When I used to work in tech, I had so many people coming to me bugging me to recuperate their data. And honestly, recovering data is most of the time either extremely difficult and time-consuming or simply impossible. Just to give you an idea, if you send a faulty drive to a lab for recovery, it's easily $1,000 or more, and even they can't recover data a lot of the time. So spending an extra $89.50 to have peace of mind is actually an extremely good investment. For the power supply, we went for the EVGA 750 watts. The price was $78.99. I've used super cheap power supplies in the past, and either they die really fast or they create power surges on the system once in a while. Also, the reason that we chose 750 watts over 550 watts or 400 watts is simply because of safety. Again, 550 watts would probably have worked, but once you start adding extra hard disk drives in the build, more RAM, and whatever components having that extra wattage, especially something like the graphics card, well, having a better wattage like 750 watts is so much better and safer for the computer. Speaking of power, the i9-9900K processor doesn't come with a CPU fan, so we opted to go with the Noctua NH D15 fan for $89.95. Again, it may seem like a lot of money for a fan, but cooling wise, the Noctua fans are like the Lamborghinis of fans. Seriously, they are super quiet and built extremely well. I do want to warn everyone that they are massive in size, so getting them to fit correctly in the tower with all the components, motherboard and RAM, can really be a challenge and might require mounting it in different ways until it fits right. For Wi-Fi, we got an ASUS PCIe AC88 dual band PCIe adapter for $109.99. Again, you don't have to go with something as expensive. Maybe your computer can simply plug through Ethernet, or you're happy with a $20 Wi-Fi card. But for gaming, having a premium Wi-Fi card which accepts 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz will make a pretty big difference. Finally, for the monitor, we went for a Spectre 30-inch ultra-wide 1080p monitor for $249.68. It also does 200 Hz. If you have a bit more money, you can go for the 4K monitor, but the 1080p monitor actually already gives an extra clean picture, so we thought that the monitor would be enough. Obviously, everyone has different tastes in monitors, but I do recommend the ultra-wide monitors for editing and gaming, as it really gives, for one, a much more immersive gaming experience since the monitor kind of curves around your line of sight. Then secondly, for editing, having an ultra-wide setup really feels like you have two monitors in front of you without having the annoying separation of the bezel. So it's a win-win. As for price breakdown, this is what everything cost. i9 9900K was $399.99. The RTX 2700 graphics card was $474.95. The Asus Prime B365 LGA socket 1151 motherboard was $79.99. The 16GB of DDR4 RAM was $62.99. The mid tower was $68.99. The 500GB M2 SSD was $59.99. The 2x4TB hard disk drives were $89.95 each for a total of $179.90. The EVGA 750-watt power supply was $78.99. The Noctua NHD 15 CPU fan was $89.95. The Asus PCIe AC88 Wi-Fi card was $109.99. The Spectre 30-inch ultrawide monitor was $249.68. This amounts to a grand total of $1,855.41 before taxes. With that in mind, you'll probably have to add around $100 to buy a keyboard and mouse and some speakers. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this computer build and price breakdown. Honestly, this is just a mock-up of what we bought. You can always save money by going with a slightly lesser processor, buying a few used components, and simply being patient about looking out for deals. Please be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.